No, everything's just been crazy busy. I'm glad Halloween is past. As much as I enjoy Halloween, I didn't get into it as much as I have in years past. Didn't really do a huge decorating on the house. I'm promising to do better with Christmas. Um, I just want to enjoy Thanksgiving first. Like I've seen a couple videos already come out where people are like closing the door on the last trick or treater, and then all of a sudden they're Mariah Carey, and I'm like,
Oh
hold on
God.
a second,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the greatest skit on Saturday Night Live where what's his face goes around knocking down people's Santa Clauses and stuff like no, he says. His name's slipping me at the moment, but
Yeah.
Keenan.
Oh, Peel.
No,
Keenan Wayans.
No,
Keenan Thomas,
Keenan Thompson. Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
We have our first studio audience participants jumping in. I see Michelle, I see Doreen, I see Enig. Good to see you guys. Welcome to another episode of the Three View Mirror podcast, the guilty pleasure that is your weekly dose of all things 70s, 80s, and 90s, where we discuss three topics brought to you by one of us every week and just delve into those topics specifically for about 15 minutes. And then at the very end, our host will see if they've managed to trick us out of understanding that somewhere in their three topics is a hidden message, something connecting those three things together. And today's host, I think, is you, Shell.
Yes.
So my name is Gen X Jono, also known as John Katrides, and I'm joined by the aforementioned Rochelle and my buddy Chris, and I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
I am Rochelle O'Black, better known as Gen X Shell across my social media profiles, and most of the people in here already know that and probably already follow me, and if you haven't, then come over and give me a visit.
And I'm Chris Clues, better known as Chris Clues. I'm a keynote speaker and author that focuses on the life and work lessons that we can learn from 80s pop culture.
And this is the Three View Mirror.
Almost there.
Floating head. All right, guys, I'm excited. I'm actually looking forward to this. I've been running around. I mentioned before the show started how it just seemed like this week got away from me, Halloween being a big deal, and I'm just ready for a little bit of normalcy to enjoy the quiet that is Thanksgiving before we jump into the Christmas, the holiday season.
Yeah, I absolutely, there is a little calm before the storm that happens here on its way up to only about 2 weeks though, because you get a week before Thanksgiving, and especially for us women, like we're usually in charge of cooking or, starting to prepare our Christmas lists and starting to prepare for Black Friday shopping. It gets crazy for us.
Can't imagine.
I just have to shop for my dog Bodie.
Well, I mean, listen, what time is it? 5:36. We're doing better on time than I think we've done in a long time. I was late to our pre-show wrap-up, so we just jumped in. Hey, John. Hey, Wirehead. Hello again, Doreen. Hello, Red. Hello, Hot Chick. Hello, Jody. Enig, I mentioned. Jim. I think that's everybody. Gretchen, if I forgot anybody, the room is filling up fast. I see Scott O'Black is in the chat, a longtime listener, first-time caller. Marie, welcome, Paul. So I do see everybody. Suzanne, guys, jump in. The thing we will say every week is, unlike some podcasts, this is an actual show with four hosts, the three of us, and then you. So drop comments. We'll throw them into the show, and we'll go on from there. But for the moment, the floor is all yours, Shell.
Okay, I have three interesting topics today. They do span the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And in doing my little work for this, I actually came up with at least 2 more weeks worth of stuff. I have them all written down here, so we're going to be good to go for a while. Today's topics are, considering this is Friday, Freaky Friday, a Freaky Friday Freaky Friday franchise Try to say that 3 times fast. So Freaky Friday, The Silence of the Lambs, and the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Dude.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to put that down.
You
It does
probably
allow me the opportunity to write the word ass twice.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that'll work in the comments there or what, but yeah. The pew pew attempt on a former president. We'll say it that way.
Oh, it was a big moment. I mean,
It was.
You were younger than Chris and I, but I was 10 and remember it clearly. But where do you want to start?
We're going to start with the 70s. We're going to start with Freaky Friday.
Chris, you look blank.
I am going to be blank on this one. To be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know I mean, I know of Freaky Friday, but I don't know
Jodie
anything.
Foster?
Maybe the only thing I know is is it similar? Is it like a Switch type of thing, kind of like Big or something like that, where they?
So there was Freaky Friday with Jodie Foster in the original. Then we had a remake in the 90s, which got really popular. My daughter absolutely loved it. And that's with Bad Girl from Mean Girls. Her name escapes me.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis was the mom.
Right.
Jamie Lee Curtis, yeah.
And the daughter was? She was also in Mean Girls.
Lindsay Lohan?
Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay
Thank
Lohan,
you,
yes.
God.
Yes. Yes.
But yes, and then there was like Kirk Cameron with Dudley Moore was in a version of this. It was just the trope of there was a collision, there was a magical spell, there was something in the adults and the kids' body and the kids in the adults' body. And it was the switch. It was I'm going to learn just how tough my kid's life is, and I never really realized it from their point of view and vice versa.
And you never saw one of them?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Man.
I'm proud of that. That's
it's just I think because it wouldn't have appealed to me, maybe. I mean, Big appealed to me, but I don't know. It just I just wouldn't have been one that I would have like jumped to see. I wasn't like a big Lindsay Lohan fan. I was 25 or 26 when that one came out. I don't think it would have been like maybe.
No, but I mean, the early one made its way even into our schools. It was the type of movie that on the day when there was nothing going on and the television and the VCR cart rolled in 1980 and I was 10, this was a movie that they could play. It was safe. It was G-rated. It was funny. You look at it now and the mom, especially the way she acts when she's the teenager inside of her, it's hokey, but it's really just easy to watch. With my 12-year-old and my 20-year-old, we did all 3 of them. We did the 2 Freaky Fridays and we just had it as a marathon. And there've been even more. They've remade it as a TV special. So we watched all of them and it's still relatable and fun. And I loved all of them. I'd be interested to see what people in the comment section think about it. Somebody mentions 18 again was a good one too.
Mm-hmm. That is a common trope that was back then, where it was, I'm going to switch bodies, switch roles, and giving everybody that bird's eye view of what it was like to switch your life around with someone else's and put yourself in someone else's shoes for just a moment. Barbara Harris, yes. Barbara Harris, Jodie Foster were the originals in 1974-ish. I believe it was early 70s. But John, I'm glad you mentioned the whole like cafeteria movie thing, because like this, and I think it was The World's Greatest Athlete. Is that the name of it? The World's Greatest Athlete. These are movies that were specific memories for me whenever I was a kid, because like you said, this was the Friday afternoon movie at the end of a 9 weeks where they brought everyone into the cafeteria and they showed a movie. The cafeteria was also the stage. It was also it was everything.
You had a gym, a cafetorium.
Gym, a cafeteria, yes. The gym, a cafeteria. Good word. Gym, a cafeteria was indeed the place where you watch these kinds of movies. I'd be curious to hear from the studio audience too here what movies besides, say, Freaky Friday or The World's Greatest Athlete or Benji was another big one that I remember seeing that they watched in the gym cafeteria when they were younger.
No, I'll jump back in again. The other thing I loved about this movie is I get to enjoy it. There's certain movies that I love being able to see from both sides of the equation. So I got to enjoy it as a kid, and it was a big ha-ha moment that I could like say, see, our lives are tough. The adults don't have a clue. And then as an adult, you look back on it and you see the other side of the perspective. We've literally flipped in real life the way these kids have flipped in the movie. And I don't know when it happened. Like it happened overnight. Yesterday, I was Lindsay Lohan, and today I'm Jamie Lee Curtis. Mm-hmm. And it literally flipped just like that. And again, the Dudley Moore and the Kirk Cameron and the 18 again with the kid from High School Musical. Who played his dad in that one? I'm not sure who played the father figure.
I never saw a High School Musical.
No, but the kid from High School Musical was in a male version of this as well.
Oh, I think somebody mentioned it
again. That somebody mentioned.
Yeah,
so
I think
someone continues on.
Yeah. Oh, somebody said Old Yeller and Herbie the Love Bug were also movies that were shown in the gym cafeteria. I'm going to use that word. I love that. I never heard that before.
Like, especially if they're small school districts, they had multiple. They call them multiple space rooms, or they're generically spaced. But yeah, gym cafetorium, because it was an auditorium, it was a gym, it's where we ate, it was everything sometimes. But it was such a great moment. And I was just talking about in a video about how like so many things. I was talking specifically how Halloween was simpler for us. We didn't need to have the perfect costume. We didn't have, cosplay on social media showing us these perfect costumes. A sheet worked perfectly fine, and we were more excited about the experience. The Jim Cafetorium Friday movie was the same way. There were movies I really didn't care for, but it didn't matter. It was about being out of class, being in a shared space, watching something funny or good or bad or whatever, but it wasn't school. And it was Matthew Perry. It was absolutely Matthew Perry. I don't know how I forgot that. Matthew Perry played the dad. But it was simple, and it's a great memory, like you said. It's just a core memory of mine. Somebody, Vista Light says Of Mice and Men was another one. Escape to Witch Mountain, I definitely saw in a gym cafetorium.
Somebody said Brian's song, which, oh God, if they would have showed me that back when I was younger, that is a tough movie. It's awesome, but tough if you haven't seen it.
Listen, in Benji, I can remember crying in the gym cafetorium because they kicked Benji, and like every girl in like the 5th grade was just bawling their eyes out because they kicked Benji, in the corner. Like, yeah, those moments just stick with you like that. And yeah,
I think a gym cafetorium is going to have to be a topic at some point.
Yes.
Robert says we had a cafetorium in our junior high, so theirs was just a cafeteria and an auditorium. The other thing I just want to say is these movies were a great example in the 70s, and they leaned into it more in the 70s. The remakes don't lean into it as much, but there's the inside joke of the little girl in the adult woman's body and then the adult relationship she has at the time. So the mom's dating. The mom has adult relationships, but now all of a sudden she's a 14-year-old girl in an adult body. And it's not something I picked up on when I saw it as a kid. And it's not even necessarily an appropriate joke to make, but they made it and they ran with it a little bit, because there's the scenes where the mom's kind of like shying away from the dad or the boyfriend as he's trying to make out with her because she's a little girl inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally didn't think about any portion of that whenever I was watching the movies. It wasn't
Big dealt with it too. A lot of people say with Big because he literally had a sleepover. In the movie Big, the little boy who's in time that now has got an adult body, the girlfriend spends the night. They don't get into it, but they got into it. And sometimes people have said, that's problematic. And then other people say, no, he's technically an adult, just albeit an immature one. And then others say, well, that's all men. We're all men in adult bodies who are little boys inside. So,
yeah.
We had
Yeah,
a
I mean,
calf
oh,
asylum in our high school.
Cafe Asylum.
it's probably more accurate. I actually let off a few stink bombs in our cafetorium one time.
Biological or chemical?
The little bottles that you step on and then they dissolve. I would have gotten away with it too, but somebody told on me. So.
Sounded like a Scooby-Doo show right there for a second.
I would have gotten away with it.
If it weren't for this.
Some of those darn kids.
So
Judge Reinhold, was he in there?
He was in one of them as well. Judge, that was a boy version. These have gone on and on and on. I mean, it is, again, I like to speak of tropes. It's a very common Hollywood trope. It's something that they revisit over and over and over again, and they'll continue to. There'll be more of these movies because it's fun for both sides. It's something that adults and children can watch, and it's literally let me see it from, I'm walking a mile in your shoes is the trope. It's a let me walk a mile in your shoes trope.
Yeah. And, I think we all wish that our parents would have understood us a little better back then and walked a mile in our shoes. I think that's why we identified a lot with these movies, is we wished our parents could almost switch with us for a day and see what it was like, going to all of our practices and getting our homework done and just dealing with the teachers and things, because they acted like we forgot what that was like. And Dawn, to your point about the switchover between, it was like Jamie Lee Curtis, speaking of Jamie Lee Curtis, one day she's the actress, she's the young woman in a movie like Halloween that we just talked about last week. The next, she's the mom. And I can remember watching several movies, and I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, where I was like, oh, that person used to play the kid in the movie. And now they're the mom in the movie. And you're like, it just blew my mind, because I'm looking at the mom and I'm thinking, I'm not that old. And then I'm going, yep, I am.
Well, I mean, I hate to be the one to bring it up, but I always am. We've talked about how Fred Savage is older today than his dad was back in the younger years. And now we've flipped. We used to be the kid in our movie, and now we're the parent in our movie. And a lot of Gen Xers are transitioning over to being the grandparent in our movie.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
I'm not ready either. No, I'm not ready.
To see a switcheroo, maybe Bender and Principal Vernon. That would have been interesting.
Nobody wants to be Vernon. Give it up.
Give it up. Yeah, we're not going back over. Doreen was here for that whole thing. She knows. We're not going back over any of that.
There's a theory that as we age, we become, or at least relate better to Principal Vernon. And it's strictly Chris's alone. Nobody as of yet has agreed with him.
That's not true. A few people did.
I don't think anyone did.
That's all right. I like to stand on my own. I like to follow the herd.
Oh, we love you, Chris. So anything else on Freaky Friday? Because I think the next topic will take us even a little bit longer, because there's so much to say about the Silence of the Lambs.
I'm ready if you are.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, especially because Chris didn't watch it.
It's very important we point out the fact that at no point in the movie, in this new timeline that we find ourselves in, does Hannibal Lecter say the famous or infamous line, what is it? Hello, Clarice.
Hello, Clarice.
He never says it.
He says something in a nice Chianti.
He says that. Oh, and there's that you do. I forgot you do that particular impression. But that's
I don't know if I call that an impression.
A lot of people remember and have quoted the line of him saying, hello, Clarice, and it never happens. It
doesn't?
No.
That's one of them Mandela effect things?
Yep.
I think he says
I'll remember it, but it never happened.
I think he says it in the book.
No, I read the book.
I did too. I read them all.
I don't think I read the book.
I read them all.
No, wait, yes, I did. Yeah. No, wait, there were a couple of them.
Yes.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bill.
Yes.
There's the Red Dragon.
Yes,
but
I did.
The Red Dragon, when they actually did the Red Dragon in the early 2000s, in my opinion, it was really bad. Like, Ralph Fiennes just is not a serial killer. If you go back and you watch Manhunter by Michael Mann in 1985-86, that is actually the Red Dragon, and it introduces us to Hannibal Lecter, but he is not the main character. Then you go to Silence of the Lambs, which I absolutely love. Although Buffalo Bill is my favorite character, I love that guy. I shouldn't say I love him. I love the guy that played the character and how he pulled it off, because he was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, he was.
How he pulled it off, considering he was a person playing somebody who wanted to take the skin off a girl to wear it. Pull it off is exactly the right words you can use.
But he was, I mean, the fact that he didn't get an Academy Award for that performance, like, it was just masterful and terrifying. And, you know, we've talked a lot about horror movies on this in our, you know, our podcast. And this one for me, like, because it's so real and it could happen anywhere and anyone. Yeah, that's it. A Sense and
That's
Stinker
it. Mhm.
is absolutely terrifying. Yeah, somebody said the OG Manhunter from the 80s, Michael Mann. Yeah, it was really, really good. Highly recommended. If you like Silence of the Lambs, go back and watch Manhunter.
So we talked, I think, last week about Final Destination and how there's certain moments because of that movie, like you can't be behind a log truck. That's forever ruined. Anytime I get on a plane, the song by Tom Petty that plays, and the girl is dancing in her car and living her best life just before it all goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot hear that song while driving in a car alone and not being, even as a guy, and not be a little creeped out. It just stayed with me. That movie was bone-chillingly frightening. Not jump scare frightening, not gory frightening. To Chris's point, reality-based, just traumatizingly frightening. When you don't know which house Jodie Foster is in, and they play around with that, and she's turning, and you think she's in one place. There's just so many scenes. American Girl, exactly right, Bonesy. The movie is a master class in cinematography and pacing, using music and tone and lighting to convey a story. It is absolutely perfect in my mind in terms of getting us to feel what they want us to feel when they want us to feel it.
And when you know, we used to go around quoting, I mean, and why we quoted this, that we would say, it puts the lotion in the basket, you know, it puts the lotion in the basket. And you know, speaking of Benji, and then when she grabbed that poor dog and brought it down there in the thing, she's like, I'm going to break his arm or leg, you know, whatever. Yeah.
I when he says, when Jodie Foster comes to his door and he's like, oh, wait, is she a really big fat person?
She's really big. And his voice is really big. Yeah, it's really.
Are you about a size 14?
Yes.
Creepy. And when he's dancing, that's probably the creepiest.
Yes. Yes. Because the talk and
that song "Goodbye Horses," which is like, there's a whole story about how they found that song for that scene. But
tell us. No, really, tell us, because you're the music guy.
I honestly can't remember it. I just remember there was a conversation, there was a story, maybe somebody can find it, where I want to say it was the director that, was it Jonathan Demme? Did he direct it? Jonathan Demme? That he was, I want to say he was in, somebody got him I guess like a tape of it. And it was, I don't want to say an underground tape, but somebody's, what do you call it when they send their tape to
bootleg
studios? No,
demo tape.
Their demo tape. I think I could be wrong, but there was a pretty cool story about how they found that song, because nobody knew it, really. I mean, it was by this group, I think, called Lazarus Q or something.
Well, considering that we may have all read the book, and I see some in the comments also read, we often mention how Stand By Me was a perfect adaptation of Stephen King's novella, The Body. Mm-hmm. They did I would say, if not as good, then about as close as you can get to that in terms of this. The casting, the direction, they stayed very true to the book, and just brought it to life.
And, you know, I think you mentioned it being like one of the scariest movies, but part of it being scary was just the stare of Anthony Hopkins. Like, and he's standing there, you know, and I know they put that mask on him when they're transporting him, and they're putting him, you know, like they're moving him with a dolly, you know, so to speak, you know.
No, it was a dolly.
That's what I mean. Like, you know, they're dollying him somewhere in his thing. But when she comes down to see him, and he's in that cell, and he's standing there as if he knew she was coming, and he's just staring straight ahead. That's the part, I think, where you're like, that acting right there with Anthony Hopkins, that's why he was a master.
Who was scarier, Buffalo Bill or Hannibal Lecter?
Hannibal Lecter by
Buffalo
far.
Bill. Buffalo Bill was scarier to me
See,
Mm.
and
because he wasn't
disagreement.
locked up. He was out there doing his thing. But also just, I don't know, the whole creepy nature of him. Although we talk about the last line in a lot of movies, and this was a pretty good one too, when he says, "I've got to go. I'm having a friend for dinner."
And
Yeah.
then they show him.
The phone, and it's the guy who was running the sane asylum.
And here's the thing. We were kind of, as the audience, okay with that. They did it in such a weird way that we weren't like, oh my God, he's going to die. We're like, okay.
Yeah,
Like
he
poetic
deserves it.
justice in some weird way. We were rooting for Hannibal Lecter at the end there.
Mhm.
That guy.
Yeah, because like he helped her catch Buffalo Bill. And so we're like, ooh, he's a hero of sorts in a movie. And who were we talking about just like a little bit ago where we were talking about you're almost rooting for the hero?
Keep talking. I'm going to keep talking.
Well, the idea of the anti-hero, they
Yeah.
do it in such a way, even like the horror movies we saw with Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
You know, you're rooting for the bad guy in a sense. Wirehead says intelligent evil is always scarier than dull brutality, which is the difference between the two, which is why I think I agree with you that Hannibal Lecter was scarier.
Mhm.
But also to Wirehead's point, we appreciate that intelligence. So one was just evil for the sake of being evil. The other, Hannibal Lecter, you didn't quite know what his motivations were in some cases. And sometimes it set us up to root for them.
Yeah. We were talking about it a few weeks ago, and I can't remember the movie we were talking about where we were rooting for the bad guy. Like the bad guy became the one, and it's slipping me. I figured somebody would remember it, but whatever.
Well, I will tell you.
Well, we were
too,
talking about Terminator. There's different times we've talked about it. It comes up.
Yeah.
It's a trope.
It's a trope. Yeah.
It's a trope.
Yeah.
So I love this topic because my sister, my stepbrother, and I are kind of obsessed with serial killer movies and the nonfiction and fiction of them. And so much so that this is my Christmas shirt my sister got me. That's where I went away.
It has a Merry Christmas.
It does this every time it's told. So that's what I wear on Christmas Eve every year.
It puts the lotion in the bottle. It has a Merry Christmas.
Now I know why you left to come back. I love it. I love
I
it.
had to go get that shirt. I mean, it does this every time it's told.
G the OG says, according to Michelle and I citing on Lecter's side, he goes, but Lecter didn't have Bill's sewing skills.
Oh.
But he was better with a knife.
Ugh.
Worse with the needle, better with a knife.
And the fact that he put them in that pit so he could starve them a little bit, so he could get the skin off of them, you know. We do underestimate though the intelligence though, because you know he had the forethought, he had the night vision goggles and the things like that. Like he had this stuff planned out. So
and I mean that was another part of it psychologically playing upon our nerves because the idea of someone being able to see you when you can't see them, that is something we all have inside of us as an instinctive fear. You know, you're in the dark. We are all instinctively afraid of the dark. As children, there's very few kids that grow up not afraid of the dark. And the dark is really just psychologically a stand-in for the unknown. What's out there? And when you peer into the darkness and the darkness peers back and you're the only one not being able to ski, that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite movies. In fact, you know, I go back and forth sometimes between which one in that genre is my favorite, whether it's Silence of the Lambs or Seven. Both of them are so well done, and they're so dark. I mean, obviously the stories are dark, but they're just done we use the word gritty a lot. Seven was a little grittier than Silence of the Lambs, but they're so well done. And I think because there are people out there like that. I mean, whether we want to believe it or not, there are people out there like that, and there's lots of them, a lot more than we know.
I was actually going to say that whenever we were talking about, you know, the first time I watched this, I was much, much, much younger. And then I think you get grizzled to the world. You start listening in a little bit better. You become, you know, an adult. And I think this came out in what, 92, something like that. So I would have been, like 19 years old, something like that. Years go by, and then you start to realize that that wasn't just a story. That was something you might be able to hear on the news. Like, as sick as it is, this was a dramatization of something that could or has happened. And it's just, it blows my mind to this day that there are people out there with this level of psychological issues where these kind of things could be a reality.
Well, Buffalo Bill is based on a real serial killer in the 50s. His name was Ed Gein.
Yeah.
And,
I know who Ed Gein. Yeah, I know Ed.
There was also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Also, kind of was playing off of Ed Gein as well. But I mean, and he actually did what Buffalo Bill did. It's. I knew that, but I when I think of Ed Gein, I did have seen and read stuff about him. And the realities of some of the thing he did. He was a grave robber. He was a lot of things, and kept bones and skin lamps and all kind of other stuff. But I didn't really realize that Buffalo Bill was based on him. I knew that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was, but I didn't really realize that Buffalo Bill was. Yeah, I mean, 4 pieces of him, but
yeah.
Before we move on, I want to focus on the name too, because I think that people talk about a lot of things about this movie and about the book itself that it's based on. They talk about Buffalo Bill. They talk about Hannibal Lecter. We bring up a lot of lines, but it's a movie that, I mean, the Silence of the Lambs, that when Jodie Foster is telling that story, you could pull that out of the movie, and I don't know that you lose anything in the movie, and yet it's still such a big part of her motivations and who she is that it becomes the name of the book, and as such the name of the movie. But I mean, you forget, it's Silence of the Lambs has, I don't know what I'm trying to say exactly. It seems like a perfect title for the movie, but when you think about it without having seen the movie, but just knowing what entered into pop culture, that piece of it never got into the pop culture, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't ever hear anybody talking about that story.
No.
When she realized that they slaughtered the lambs. I mean, it's just that piece of it stays outside of the lexicon. So that when I was talking about my daughter wanted to read a book together, I brought it up and she's like, well, she goes, I've seen the movie, but what was she disconnected at this point because the name doesn't easily connect to the book.
That's how well done it was. I mean, that tells you how great the movie is, the performances and everything, that it was able to go beyond the title. So if you see that title and you don't know the movie, you would wonder what the hell it was about. Silence of the Lambs, it doesn't really tell you that much. I mean, 7 doesn't either, but that goes to show you like how well done it was because it got beyond the title, which was, to John's point, the story is important in the book. But they didn't make a huge thing out of it in the movies. They came back to it a couple times, but not like the book. The book really dug
into it. The movie, the whole point of it was Lecter trying to draw something out of Clarice that she didn't want to share. It's him getting into her head. And as soon as they establish that, they walk away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and you guys are recalling the book. I know I read it, but you're recalling the book a whole lot more than I recall events from the book.
Thomas Harris, the author, and just like really,
I know I read it. I was a big reader whenever I was younger. I read just about everything. Loved to read. So
Silence of Lambs.
I did though. I read it. I did. I just don't remember.
Well, that means you don't know. You're saying I know I read it, but I don't remember if I read it. Both things can't be true. It's one or the other.
It's kind of like, remember the girl with the dragon tattoo? I read that whole series too, but I really couldn't tell. And I loved it.
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
But I couldn't tell you what was in the book now.
But do you remember reading Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah, one of them. I read them all. I did.
You stake your life on it.
I read when he said Red Dragon, yes, I absolutely did.
Okay.
Yeah. I know I did.
All right.
Little fun fact though. They filmed a portion of the Silence of the Lambs in my neck of the woods in Pittsburgh. There's a memorial building, the Soldiers and Sailors building in the city of Pittsburgh. And the scene where he is in the giant cage in the middle of a room, from what I understand, that is the scene that they filmed at the Soldiers and Sailors building. There were portions of it filmed here.
It's definitely one of those few movies that you can say from beginning to end, doesn't seem to be an extra minute. I mean, even some of the movies that I really enjoy and that I love, I always find 10 or 15 minutes. I'm like, was that really like they need that piece? Did it just extend to the time? But maybe I have to go watch it again. It's been a few years, but I just don't recall getting to a point where I'm like, this 10 or 12 minutes isn't flowing for me.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of our shows that I'm going to watch the movie tonight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good time to
100%
watch it.
on board. I'm going to watch the movie tonight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Christmas movie.
Because you remember all of it, and probably every single scene. You can even remember the lines as they come up because you watched it multiple times. But I got to tell you a story though. Speaking of it, how many years do you think it's been, John, since you've watched Silence of the Lambs?
Easily 10 years.
Okay. So just this past week for Halloween, I did a horror movie sequel or video. Okay.
I saw it.
Yeah. Okay. Do we were talking about Mandela effect and all those other things. I haven't seen Poltergeist, but when I did watch it, I probably watched it 30 times back in the day when it was commonly on, say, HBO or whatever. Do you know I called her Carrie Ann? Like an idiot? It's Carol Ann.
Carol Ann.
Yeah, it's Carol Ann.
Carol Ann. Listen, but that's what I'm just saying, though. Like,
but that happens. It's so funny that you mentioned
your mouth just starts
your
going.
mouth does what it wants.
It does
I did a video today, not related to today's topic, but I did a video. I do this thing where I'm like, how old am I? And then different editions.
Mhm.
How old am I? Commercials editions. Well, today was 80s fashion brands edition.
Mm-hmm.
And I edited it and I timed it perfectly and I put the captions up and I spent all my time and I'm listening to it before I hit post. And I realized that when speaking about jeans, I said V Cavarici instead of Z Cavarici.
Yeah. That's what
And
I'm
I'm
saying.
like, maybe if I caption it, it'll look like I'm saying, but no. I enunciated very well V. And all my wife heard me do was yell, fuck! Because I had to, and it was like, sometimes we can go in and pull a clip out, but other times we can't. The lighting has changed. It just doesn't work. I had to make a choice. Do I trash the entire video and start over, which is what I ended up doing, another hour of my life gone forever? Or do I just put it out there like I don't know? And there's this greedy little evil part of my brain that says people correcting me in the comments will help push it into the algorithm.
Listen, I know it's off topic, but whenever I did that this week, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how do we not remember things the way that we thought we remembered them? Because you haven't watched something in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, even though clearly as soon as someone says it, you're like, son of a bitch.
It wasn't a slip of the tongue. For me, it was a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
You're just having your own personal Mandela effect where you think it's one way and it's really another.
No, they say it like 1,000 times in the movie. Carol Ann, where's Carol Ann? Where's Carol Ann? Where's Carol Ann? And there I was, and I said, Carrie Ann. I don't even know why I said it. So, yeah.
And I mean, that whole talk about life and how movies are scarier when they feel real. Poltergeist as a franchise was cursed. I mean, you can start with Little Heather O'Rourke,
Yes.
who actually her tragedy throughout the movie, and
Dominique
there were people
Dunn.
on set that had accidents. That
Mhm.
movie, there's something there.
Yeah. Dominique Dunn, she was murdered, and yeah.
This house is clean.
Before it goes, I would have totally been the bitch that corrected you. You're all over. You have no, and I mean, part of me, like I know creators that purposely do it because it does help.
Yeah.
Those are comments, and people love getting in the comments and putting that little correction or telling us how much. This is so off topic now. How much do you love the you forgots? We have 60 seconds to delve into a topic in our shorts. 60 seconds, and when we're doing things like songs of the 80s, they're like, you forgot.
Yeah.
I didn't forget I have 60 seconds. These are the ones I picked.
Yeah. This is what I chose to talk about, and I had to talk about it so fast because if I don't talk about it fast, you guys are all going to click and go forward, and you're never ever going to listen to me again. So there, I said it really fast, and then you say stuff stupid, and then you're like, I don't want to do this again. I've already filmed it once. I'm done. I'm hitting. You know what though? I hadn't caught that until somebody pointed it out to me.
You guys
So
know
you
who
have it.
directed-
It'll
I'm
help
gonna-
you.
I'm
That
gonna bring
video will
us
do
back.
well.
I'm bringing us back.
Bring us
You
back.
know,
Bring us back.
who
Yes.
directed Poltergeist? Toby Hooper, who also did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So everybody thinks Steven Spielberg, but Spielberg, I believe, was executive producer, which makes a lot of sense because Poltergeist is like very different movie from what
E.T.?
Spielberg would have typically done. Yeah, E.T. and Batteries Not Included and all the stuff that he was doing at the time. Raiders, very, very different. But great movie, scary movie, and taking us back to Silence of the Lambs. I just want to point out again, if you love Christmas like I do, it is a Christmas movie. That is the shirt I wear on Christmas Eve all the time. I get great comments on it, and I
Why
usually
is
get
it a Christmas movie? I understand Die Hard and Gremlins. You're kind of losing me on this one.
I'm just saying it's a Christmas movie because I wear my Silence of the Lambs shirt on Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
I think
right.
it's actually probably a September, October movie based on when the leaves on the ground with the van and everything. But
Well, we are a little bit behind now because Chris took us way off topic there for like 10 minutes.
yeah,
Thank you
sure.
for bringing us back, Shell.
All right. Let's go into the last topic here. I don't know if it'll be a
Remember
whole
what the topics are.
last topic. Okay, so we have already gone over Freaky Friday, the Silence of the Lambs, and now we're talking about the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Okay. I got a little bit of trivia on this one.
Go for it.
81, right?
So it was 1980. I'm pretty sure.
80?
I could
81.
have jumped into 81, but I'm thinking I was 10. I know I was in the 5th grade.
Oh, that was 81.
It was
Could
81.
have been.
Yeah.
It was the 81. But because I was saying, so I knew I was in the 5th grade because in the 5th grade, I was so annoyingly smart that my elementary school had enough of me by halfway through the day. I'd finished my work and would start to bother all the other children. So they got rid of me. I only went to elementary school for half a day, and then they made me go to the high school to hang out in the library for the rest of the half a day by myself, just doing independent research because I, again, was annoyingly intelligent, apparently. But that being said, the day he was shot, I was at the high school, and the librarian let me watch the whole thing on the TV that she had in her office. So I got to watch it live as it was happening as a 10-year-old. But here's the trivia. A lot of us Xers, for whatever reason, love the TV show, The Greatest American Hero. Do you remember the name of the person in The Greatest American Hero, the hero in the great? His name was John Hinckley in the show. So they had to change his name, or felt they had to change his name after the assassination. They changed his last name so it wouldn't be the same as the would-be assassin. And then after about 4 or 5 episodes, they realized that was pretty silly and they changed it back.
Oh, I did not know that. And
I did not know that either.
Greatest American Hero.
Yep, for about 4 episodes, his last name is changed as a result of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Well,
And-
sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say that was one of those where they wheeled the TV into the what did you call it? The Jim Cafetorium. One of those events where they wheeled the TV in, just like the space shuttle. Watching the space shuttle launch. So I remember them wheeling TVs, but I think we were in our classroom actually, and letting us know what had happened, and just the shock that everybody had, and the silence in the room, even for kids that were 11 years old. We kind of understood what was going on.
I just remember being excited that I got to get out afterwards and let all the high schoolers know what I knew and they didn't. One of which being my brother, who I got to tell you is a sophomore in high school. To have his 5th grade brother hang around the high school with him he hated it with severe passion.
I got to go to a half a day of elementary school too. It's funny.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Same reason?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Chris?
What?
Guess not.
I totally missed what you were saying.
That was so freaking perfect.
I was reading some of the comments.
Oh, that was so perfect. Evidently, Chris stayed late.
Chris stayed after class. Yeah, no, I got my work done too fast, and then I was bored, and I was a nuisance, and not in a bad way, not in a boy
No, it wasn't mischievous. I was just annoying. I was wandering around, and I had nothing to do. When we were growing up, schools didn't know how to deal with kids on either side of the equation. If you had academic challenges, whether it was because of whatever reason, they just threw you in a room and called it a day. If you were part of that gifted and talented, which is the name of a group that got me beat up on more occasions than I like to admit, then they didn't know what to do with you then either. Cindy goes, go back to sleep, Chris.
I was reading the comments, but that's not atypical of how I was in class anyway. The teacher would call me and I'd say, what?
What?
What? Sorry, I was over here daydreaming. I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you give me the question again, maybe I give you the answer.
No, it's okay. I like it as it is.
I liked it as it was too. Yeah, it was an awesome answer.
So the other thing is I remember they whisked him away, took him off, didn't think anything of it. He was fine. They never really even told the American people in real time just how serious it was. It was a near fatal shot, and they didn't think it was.
Yeah.
And then I just remember all the drama playing out on real television at a time when things didn't play out like that. We weren't used to CNN. We didn't have Fox News. We didn't have MSNBC. It was basically we interrupt for this special programming, and it was just they weren't ready to keep up with things. Alexander Haig, who was Secretary of State, thinking he was in charge when he wasn't, because the president went down. The vice president was outside of the country, I guess. So Haig was telling everybody, I'm in charge, and clearly wasn't. It should have been Speaker of the House.
And Reagan was still apparently, he was in trouble, but he was conscious. And that was part of it with when Haig was trying to take control, and they were like, no. Yeah.
How long was he in the hospital? I don't even know.
Over a week, I'm guessing.
Is it that way? See, because the reason I brought this up too was because, speaking of your Jim Cafetorium and like watching the movies and things like that, there weren't too many moments of news that I remembered very distinctly from elementary school, other than, and somebody already brought it up, I remembered this very distinctly, TV being brought in, because this was news happening, like John said, before CNN, before all the news channels and 24/7 news, the Challenger accident. These are the things that like you just recalled because they were historic, happening right at that particular moment. And for me, this was one of them where I was like, oh, I'd heard about, JFK getting shot at, or getting shot, not shot at, getting shot. But it was too far removed for me. This was real. And it struck me. It burned in my brain a little bit.
So a Florida man is correct. I just looked it up. He was in the hospital for 12 days. The hot chick mentions how one of the entourage was killed. And prior to that, our fourth host, Aaron, said that the assassination attempt resulted in the Brady Bill. So the amazing thing about this assassination attempt is it literally changed history.
Mm-hmm.
It changed history with things like the Brady Bill. It changed history because it changed Ronald Reagan. He wrote in his memoirs how this completely changed him as a person, and all the outreach to the Soviet Union, working with Gorbachev, that was a change. That was a flip. He stopped going after the evil empire and tried to find a way to work with them because of this assassination attempt. He realized that his life had to count for something more than just politics. If not for this assassination attempt, we may not have seen the Berlin Wall go down. We may not have seen the Stark agreements where so many nuclear weapons were disposed of. I mean, it is a classic, maybe one of very few situations where something really bad happening created something. I mean, you don't know what the road not taken was, but so much of what happened as a result of this was positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is, I think it was in 1987, he was actually doing a speech, I think in West Berlin, and there was a balloon that popped in
Yes.
the crowd, and he said, "Missed me."
Yeah.
Which, I mean, was just great timing. His first instinct was "missed me."
He had a great sense of humor. There were a couple of things. There's a couple of quotes that you can hear him say things that were just like almost deadpan kind of things whenever you could hear him being quoted.
Yeah, that I mean, I'm just thinking about how you were saying it was just incredible moment in time. And I think somebody mentioned they were 5 years old and all the networks were covering it. And it does, I mean, it was obviously a monumental moment, but it's moments like those that I would guess there was a collection of them in the 80s that led to our 24-hour news networks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these were things that happened. The Challenger, obviously, but it wasn't that long. Maybe it was I don't know when CNN started, but maybe 86,
Started in the 70s, but it didn't really. Two events got it to work. One was Baby Jessica. One was Challenger.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Those were the two things that before then it was in a lot of trouble because people weren't listen. Even 12 days in the hospital, I promise you, The Price is Right still was played in those 12 days. I promise you, Dallas was still on.
Yeah.
They didn't cover. People had to wait till 6 or 11 in order to find out how the president was. They didn't break in to let us know that he was doing great. It's just the way it was. Now, a lot of people will point to this time in Reagan's life and say it's the time when Nancy's influence also started to really go crazy because her astrologer, I always want to say astronomer, and that would be wrong. Her astrologer warned against this trip, that something was going to happen to him. And from that point on, Nancy went into overdrive, believing all that stuff, and got into his schedule and was dictating exactly what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. You could not just say no to Nancy Reagan after this happened.
Well, I got that one. I got it.
Just say no. Oh, bum.
Yeah, there was actually, somebody mentioned he was trying to get Jodie Foster's attention too, but there was actually a punk rock band that came out in 1981 called JFA, which was Jodie Foster's Army. So Jodie Foster was a thing for sure back then. So I don't know. I mean, that was a band that I listened to anyway. If anybody else was into punk rock, they probably know JFA.
I've got to do the math or look it up. But the other thing about this assassination attempt was that before this, you could draw a line. There was a chronological line in terms of years whenever there was assassination or an assassination attempt on a president. And I think, I could be wrong, somebody fact checked me, I think this fell into that timeline. Like there was always this understanding that whoever won the election in 80 was at risk. Because it just, again, somebody can fact check me. I just remember as a kid. So I'm going back to my 10-year-old memory, knowing this knowledge. So it could be wrong, but I remember as kids were believing in this timeline because it was X number of years between each assassination and or assassination attempt.
I don't know. I hadn't heard that. I don't remember that.
Well, you're not remembering a lot. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. You don't remember reading an entire book.
I was in those classes too, John. I just don't recall. So moving on from this, so it's 6:26. Moving on from this, I think you two probably have a really good idea and know what the connection is. Maybe knew from the beginning what the connection was. I don't know. Maybe it did. Let's see. And I thought maybe the studio audience here might be able to come up with the connection between Freaky Friday, the Silence of the Lambs, and the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, for me, this was one. I'm gonna defer to the fourth host, but definitely one that right off the gun. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
I had a shot at getting this one right away.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't mean again that the topics weren't amazing. And it didn't mean again that it just goes to show you that sometimes these connections, although obvious, are still incredible, that you can connect one person to these three or one topic or one thing. Cindy says, drum roll, please, Jodie Foster.
Jodie
Now,
Foster.
this is a red herring, which Shell loves throwing up. I'm going to feel like an idiot.
It is not a red herring today.
Okay.
I've had those red herring moments. Yes, I have. But no, this was one that, and I had some tougher Jodie Foster things in there, but then I thought they're too tough. Or then I had some easier ones, and then they were too easy. I just decided to let this one be a connection that everyone could get if they knew a little bit about maybe I think that third connection about Hinckley attempting the assassination of Ronald Reagan. It started, and I was going to make Taxi Driver one of the connections, one of the connections here, because Jodie Foster was actually, that's what one of her breakout roles was, you know, besides the whole Disney-ish kind of stuff like Freaky Friday when she was younger. Taxi Driver, where she played a young prostitute with Robert De Niro. They were Hinckley became obsessed with her after watching Taxi Driver, and Hinckley then, that's what motivated him. He started following her around. He started, you know, even following her to Yale University so that he could, because he was obsessed with her after Taxi Driver. And then that's when he attempted the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. So if nobody knows about this, I don't know if our audience knows. They want a little bit more detail about this.
Blister Bill, hello, Clarice, said no, it was never uttered in that movie.
Never said.
Well, and like my little trivia, you could have ditched Jodie Foster, kept the assassination, and brought the greatest American hero in as a topic, because again, John Hinckley forced the name change in that script. It's just, it's pop culture.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
Is that these things leave their little echo chain. They leave their isolated spot in time and place and join the greater popular culture. And there's been no greater popular culture to look back on than those 3 decades that we stick to.
Somebody here mentioned Coppertone. She was in an early Coppertone commercial. And that was another thing. You know, there were so many things, but I was like, well, unless you're truly a Jodie Foster fan, are you really going to know this? Are you really going to be able to pick up on some movie that maybe a lot of us didn't see in the Jimmy Cafetorium? But this episode in particular, even if you knew it was Jodie Foster from the beginning, who is, by the way, an amazing actress. I've loved her in so many things. The Accused was disturbing, but so good. I remember watching that. Somebody mentioned that here. Panic Room. I loved Panic Room. I thought that was
It's just so funny that this is the connection, because
Mhm.
I can pull up footage of so many shows that we've done that I'm like, we share a brain, we share a brain, we share a brain. I watched 2 nights ago. So I got this new thing. It's called a VC Android box. It's kind of like a Fire Stick on crack. You plug it into your TV and I can watch everything now. And I don't know if I should be saying this.
It's like a
on something going
Napster.
on.
It's like Napster for TV.
Yeah, kinda.
Okay.
So I pulled up a movie that nobody but me has ever seen. I ended up watching. Everybody went to bed, and I'm like, you know what? I remember this movie, and it really was a movie that made me feel something with one of the 3 last remaining feelings I have. Let me see if it holds up. It was called Stealing Home, because I was remembering that these baseball movies. I have an affinity for baseball movies, whether it's Field of Dreams or the funny ones like Major League, Sandlot. Another baseball, Bad News Bears, which was another one. Jodie Foster was in Bad News Bears, right?
No.
Or am I thinking Tatum O'Neal?
Tatum
O'Neal. Somebody wrote Jodie Foster and Bad News Bears and made me think of it. Well, Linda just mentioned it. Anyway,
Mandela
so there's
Effect.
a movie called Stealing Home. Mark Harmon's in it, and Jodie Foster plays a huge role in the movie, and it's just an incredible movie. It's. Have you ever seen it?
I
I know the name. I've never seen it, but when you said Stealing Home, it definitely like rung a bell or two.
It is such a great movie, and she is quintessentially Jodie Foster in it. I love the movies where the actors play themselves almost as much as I love when they go against type and really show their acting skills by being something completely different. But if you guys haven't seen it and you have access to it, Stealing Home is Mark Harmon's in it. It's just it's a beautiful, touching story. It's almost as touching as Beaches.
And I see everybody mentioning so many great movies from Jodie Foster, though. Contact, Little Man Tate, Nell, when she couldn't speak. Nell was an incredible movie. And somebody mentioned it was their favorite too. She has such an amazing career, and she's one of them child actresses that made it through, I guess, too. She didn't succumb to, I guess, all the Hollywood and all of that, and she made it.
She was also in a lot of TV shows back in the day
Yeah.
too. And I used to watch this show called The Courtship of Eddie's Father
Yep.
with my dad. People Let Me Tell You About My Best Friend, and had Bill Bixby, who went on to be the Incredible Hulk as well, or at least, the human side of the Incredible Hulk.
David Banner.
Yeah, David Banner. Thank you. And my,
You know why they called him David Banner on the show?
No,
In the comic, it was Bruce Banner.
no.
Because studies back then, focal groups that they did, showed that the name Bruce was too gay.
What?
Really?
True story.
I mean, this
In the comic, it was always Bruce Banner, but the name
Really?
Bruce was deemed too gay back in the early 80s to be the title character's first name. So if any Bruces are watching and they're not gay, I'm not trying to out you or anything. I'm just saying that's what life was like back in the early 80s.
Bruce Lee would like a word.
Yeah, you think?
I mean, I'm just.
Well put.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
Bruce-
Cindy, she's
Bruce
a Yale
was the
trained.
shark-
She's from
Bruce was
Yale.
the Shark and Jaws too. So
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah.
Little Man Tate was awesome. She just I think she did a couple ABC after school specials. Yep, somebody at Wirehead says Bruce Banner sounded gay. That's exactly why. Very strange, but there it was.
Mhm.
And then Jodie Foster's personal life. It was at a time again that I always mention this. We didn't care. Was that
What
you,
was that?
or was that Gizmo?
Somebody just have a moment.
I was not passing gas, if that's what you're asking. That was my husband drilling something
Oh,
in the
I
nether
thought
regions
Chris
of
was
our house
releasing
here.
stink bombs in the cafeterium again. No, but I say it all the time. People are like, oh, the 80s, you guys weren't, my kids are like, you guys weren't as inclusive. It just was, we didn't care. Her private life was her private life. She made a couple comments which made people think one way or the other. Back then, I didn't know. I don't know today, and I don't care. We didn't care. She was able to play all parts in all movies, and what her personal life was, nobody really cared.
Mhm.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I mean, somebody mentioned Christy McNichol too. Like,
Yep.
I think that was like, yeah, that was
Yeah,
the look. Right?
parallel.
Christy McNichol and Jodie Foster, like, yeah. Definitely the late 70s look for sure. And if you watch the movie Dazed and Confused, which is a great movie and set in the late 70s, you'll see like there's a very much a Jodie Foster, Christy McNichol look to the fashion and the girls or the women that are in the movie as well. It was the look for sure.
And that there was that whole like helmet kind of hair thing, like the longer Dorothy Hamill too. That.
I think with Jodie Foster and Christy McNichol, though, it was kind of a testament to the tomboys of the time. The girls that had those haircuts that I knew in my life were the tougher and more tomboy girls. Yeah, they were girls. They were this, but they would hang with us. They'd play baseball with us. They'd hang out with us. They'd play they were the tomboys, which is not an expression you hear anymore.
Tomboy, yeah, that's right.
Anyway.
Hello?
Hi,
Hello, Bueller.
Bueller.
I don't know. I mean,
That's all I got.
Some comments, some connections, speaking to the audience now, are harder than others. Sometimes you really have to know the material in order to be able to get in it.
Mhm.
And then at the end, you're like, wow, I never would have got that. Sometimes it's as plain as the nose on our face, and we still don't get it. And it's I can't believe I didn't get it moment when Shell is taking us back through the conversations. And you realize there have been episodes where I've said the connection 4 or 5 times, but when asked to say it, I didn't know it.
Mhm.
I didn't know that I knew it. And then sometimes it's like today.
Yeah. We're right off the bat. You could just pick it out. I wanted to try to find, like I said, page boy haircut. Yes, Blister Bill. That's the haircut I was thinking of. I have a whole bunch of notes that were like scribbled down and what do I use of hers and how do I make more connections and things. And I just decided to give it almost as easy as it could be. And I thought if it was easy, I don't know how many people would know about the assassination attempt.
I'm a junkie. I mean, I don't
Did
know
you know
why
it, Chris?
the JFK assassination. I know so much about this one. It's just something I've always had an interest in.
Well, I didn't know the Freaky Friday, but then I made the connection when we talked about Silence of the Lambs and then the Jodie Foster with John Hinckley. And I just was like, okay, now I can make this connection.
Yeah.
Soon as I said Jodie Foster on Freaky Friday, I regretted it. I'm like, damn it, I shouldn't have said it out loud. But it was going to come out no matter what.
I love it because the 3 weeks of kind of spooky season, we actually talked about something spooky in each one of the shows, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, we did.
Awesome, guys. Well, listen, next week it comes back to you, Chris.
Yep, comes back to me. I'm next week, so you can imagine there's going to be something with music.
I will plug. It's not on the horizon for anytime soon. Get through the holidays, get into next year, but I will plug that in the first quarter of next year, maybe just after Easter, we are looking to take the show out there in real time. Possibly visiting each of our hometowns first. And by home, I mean where we are today, being Charlotte area, Pittsburgh area, maybe Orlando for Chris. But there may be an opportunity in the not too distant future to not only be part of our live studio audience, but be part of our live studio audience in real life. So if you guys are amenable to travel and think it might be fun to be able to sit with us in real time and go through one of these episodes, that opportunity is coming along with meet and greets and some fun stuff. So just know that that's coming, and anything y'all can do to help the show grow between now and then would help facilitate that process. So continue to share, post it, share it with your friends and family, direct them this way, and we'll see where we go.
And I want to add in there too that I noticed that John didn't say that we were a podcast anymore. And although we are available on some of those podcast channels, I think we are with this live studio audience thing. We are trying to head more towards truly getting the audience involved. And if you do decide, and we have the plans made for us to go live, we are going to be out and in the audience more and getting your actual reactions and your viewpoints, not typed into the comments, but actually, as part of the show. So we want to make this more of a show that really does involve our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're excited, and we hope you are as well. And so let us know if this is something that you would be interested in. That's great. Somebody in PA. And I also see that I'm kind of put on the spot now by Wirehead and Record Hound that apparently I'm going to have some kind of punk rock or some kind of cool music connection next week. So
is there any way you wouldn't?
Well, I mean, punk rock might be a little bit hard because that's, listen, those of us who are really into it, we know it well, but it's,
yeah, you're going to lose me more than likely if you get too far into it.
Yeah.
It's got to be the big ones like the Sex Pistols and the Dead Kennedys kind of, stuff and even then we might still lose John. I don't know.
Still lose me.
Still lose John. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned that that's going to be a long show if we're live. But believe me, as we put this together, as John said, there's going to be a lot of different things going on. There'd be a meet and greet. There'd be, we may even talk about having dinner. We're looking at this being an evening together with all of you. The show as part of the evening, but an evening for all of us to gather, have a good time, be nostalgic, and ultimately have the show as the centerpiece of the evening.
I'd love to meet everybody.
Well, and Doreen wraps us up. Today's connection was Jodie Foster. Mm-hmm. So for those watching,
yes,
guys, it was a good connection. Back to the new connection with Chris next week, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here. And that's all I got.
That's all I got.
Don't worry, everybody. It will not. The punk rock will not be the connection. It's just there may be a little conversation somewhere in the episode next week, but it will. I promise you, it'll not be the connection as much as I would love it to be.
All right, guys. I will see you on the flip side. Join us here again next week, and like I said, do your level best to bring a friend. I'm out. See ya.
All right. See ya.
All right, stay rad, everybody.
Oh, I forgot our music. It's okay.